The desert stretched endlessly under the scorching sun, a barren expanse of sand and rock, nothing out of the ordinary, until James Archer, the lead archaeologist, discovered something hidden beneath the earth for centuries, or perhaps millennia, a glint of metal shining through the dirt. As he brushed away the layers of sediment, it became clear that this was no ordinary artifact. The team had been digging at this site for weeks, and had uncovered only the usual remains of ancient human settlements, broken pottery tools, and bones. But this was different, a large object unlike anything they had ever seen before, curved, smooth surfaces, like polished stone, yet metallic, a dark, gleaming material that seemed to absorb the sunlight in strange ways. The object was partially buried, and its size was massive, far larger than anything they had expected. No one on the team had ever seen anything like it. James was the first to kneel beside the discovery, his heart pounding with excitement and fear. He called over Olivia Mitchell, his trusted colleague and scientist whose expertise in alien technologies had been instrumental in their past work together. She crouched down beside him, her eyes wide with disbelief, as she examined the smooth surface of the object. Olivia ran her fingers over the surface, the strange symbols etched into the metal shimmering faintly, as if they were alive. She squinted at them, trying to make sense of their meaning, but they were unlike any language she had encountered before. They seemed to pulse as she touched them, and suddenly the ground beneath them trembled slightly. A low hum began to resonate from deep inside the object, vibrating through the earth and up into their bones. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable, but soon it became more pronounced, like a heartbeat pounding louder and louder, as if the object was coming to life. The team stopped everything they were doing and stood frozen, listening to the hum. It was unlike any sound they had ever heard, not mechanical nor natural, but something entirely alien. James felt a chill run down his spine. He had always believed in the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but to be this close to proof was overwhelming. The excitement in the air was palpable, but so was the fear. Within minutes, the team had set up a perimeter around the site and sent out a message to their headquarters back in the city. The signal was clear. This was a discovery that could change everything. They weren't just dealing with an unknown relic, but something that could alter humanity's understanding of the universe itself. Within hours, a small team of military officials arrived, led by General Marcus Wilder, a man with cold eyes and a sharp demeanor, who immediately took control of the site. It didn't take long before the government sent in their own experts to begin investigating the object. The hum from the wreckage continued to reverberate through the ground, unsettling anyone who got too close. James and Olivia had no idea that this discovery would set in motion a chain of events far beyond anything they could have imagined. They only knew one thing: this was just the beginning, and nothing would ever be the same again. Days passed, and the buzz of excitement grew louder as word of the discovery spread across the world. Scientists from every corner of the globe arrived to analyze the wreckage, along with government officials and military personnel eager to harness whatever secrets the alien artifact held. James and Olivia were kept on the sidelines as their research facility became a hub for high-level meetings and discussions that they were no longer a part of. James could feel the tension in the air. The presence of government officials in their lab made it clear that this was no longer an academic pursuit, but a high-stakes race for control of something far more powerful than anything they had ever imagined. The hum from the wreckage never ceased. It seemed to pulse in time with their thoughts, as if aware of their every move. It wasn't until Olivia made the first breakthrough that the true scope of the wreckage became clear. She had been studying the strange symbols for hours, trying to decode their meaning using a mix of linguistic algorithms and pattern recognition tools. She was beginning to notice a series of repeating sequences that suggested a form of communication. But it wasn't just any communication. It was far more complex than anything she had ever encountered. The symbols weren't random. They formed a code that stretched into thousands of characters, stretching beyond the limits of human understanding. At first, it felt like a puzzle too complex to crack. But then Olivia's mind began to connect the dots. Her eyes widened as she realized that these weren't just symbols, but a type of advanced mathematical language, one that described the very nature of the universe itself. The equations were unlike anything humanity had ever conceived of before. They described laws of physics that could manipulate the fundamental forces of nature itself. With trembling hands, she passed her findings to James, who was equally stunned by the implications. They weren't just dealing with an alien artifact. They were dealing with an advanced technology that could alter the balance of power on Earth itself if understood and used correctly. The alien technology wasn't just a relic. It was a blueprint for a weapon so powerful that it could control the most basic elements of the universe. The equations revealed a design for an energy source capable of harnessing vast amounts of power, far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something far more devastating. It was a tool that could manipulate energy on a cosmic scale, potentially altering the very fabric of reality itself. James immediately called a meeting with Olivia to share the news, but before they could get far, the door to their lab burst open, and General Marcus Wilder entered, flanked by several armed soldiers and government scientists. "James, you need to understand that the moment we discovered this wreckage, it stopped being yours." Olivia's face went pale as she looked at the general, who spoke with chilling authority. "You've uncovered something far too dangerous for public knowledge." The general's words sent a shiver down their spines. The knowledge they had uncovered was no longer theirs to share. It was now under the control of the military and intelligence agencies, who had their own plans for how to use it. James felt a surge of anger, but knew it was pointless to argue with Wilder, who had already taken control of the site. He glanced at Olivia and saw the same concern in her eyes. They had both come to the same terrifying conclusion. The artifact wasn't just an ancient relic, it was an active threat, and the more they learned about it, the more dangerous it seemed. Becoming aware of its true power could be humanity's greatest mistake. But the military had no interest in abandoning this newfound power. They would stop at nothing to harness it, and that meant there was only one thing left to do: fight to stop the weapon from being activated at any cost. As the days passed, the air around the research facility grew thick with tension. The discovery had transformed from a historical breakthrough to an international crisis. News outlets around the world were buzzing with rumors, and whispers of the wreckage's potential began to spread like wildfire. Governments scrambled to establish control, while military forces set up perimeters around the site, treating the artifact like a weapon of mass destruction. Olivia and James found themselves increasingly isolated, their access to the wreckage restricted. The once dominant voices of academic pursuit had been drowned out by the cold, calculating force of the military-industrial complex. Inside the facility, General Marcus Wilder was relentless in his pursuit to unlock the alien technology. His presence had grown more domineering with each passing day, and the mood among the researchers shifted. Some were still excited by the prospect of discovering advanced extraterrestrial knowledge, while others, like Olivia and James, began to sense the peril in what they had uncovered. What had once seemed like a fascinating enigma now appeared to be a ticking time bomb. In private conversations, Olivia shared her growing concern with James. "If the military gets full control of this, they won't hesitate to turn it into a weapon," she said, her voice low and anxious. "We're already seeing it. They're not even trying to understand it. They're only interested in using it as leverage over other nations." James rubbed his temples, his thoughts racing. "We need to get ahead of this. If the technology is as dangerous as we suspect, the world can't know about it. Not yet. Not until we fully understand it." But even as he said it, he knew how unrealistic that sounded. It was already too late. The global powers had already taken interest, and no one was willing to let go of the chance to control something so potent. The wreckage had begun to emit even more powerful pulses of energy, causing strange phenomena in the surrounding area. Communications were scrambled and electronic devices malfunctioned. The pulses had started to affect not just the immediate vicinity but also distant cities, causing power grids to surge and disrupt. People in nearby towns reported unusual occurrences: electrical storms, magnetic anomalies, and faint tremors in the earth. Scientists studying the wreckage began to realize that the alien technology wasn't just a passive relic, it was actively interacting with the environment. James had been working in the facility's underground lab when a new development caught his attention. A signal had been transmitted, this one more coherent, a sequence of encrypted data patterns, directly from the wreckage. The data wasn't just random gibberish. It was an invitation, or a command. James's heart raced. This wasn't just a machine. It was alive in some way, aware of its surroundings. He quickly called Olivia over. Together, they analyzed the transmission. The message was both a warning and a map. It contained coordinates that led to an unknown location, far off the grid, deep within the ocean. As they continued to decipher the transmission, they began to understand the implications of what they had uncovered. The wreckage wasn't just a weapon, it was a beacon. A beacon that could potentially activate something far more devastating than anyone had anticipated. James realized that the alien civilization that created it had long since vanished, but left behind something far more dangerous than technology. It was a signal, a lure to whoever discovered it, beckoning them toward a catastrophic truth. "This isn't just about power," Olivia said, her voice trembling. "It's about control over life itself." But just as they were about to act, General Wilder arrived, his presence filling the room like a shadow. He had been monitoring their every move. "You're wasting time," he said coldly. "The world doesn't care about your theories. We're taking control of this. You'll help us unlock its true potential." James and Olivia exchanged a glance, their worst fears now a reality. The military wasn't interested in understanding the wreckage. They wanted to use it to reshape the world. The clock was ticking, and the only question left was whether they could stop them before it was too late. The pressure inside the facility was suffocating. The wreckage had become more than a discovery. It had become the focal point of global power struggles, a dangerous prize in an international race. General Wilder had made it clear. The military intended to use the alien technology for leverage, turning it into a weapon that could alter the balance of power. James and Olivia's worst fears were being realized. They weren't just facing a new chapter in human history. They were on the brink of a catastrophe. Olivia spent sleepless nights studying the transmission. The coordinates were etched into her mind, each sequence of numbers spinning in her thoughts like a riddle. It wasn't just a map, it was a path to something deeper, something hidden in the oceans, waiting to be unlocked. But what was it? She couldn't shake the feeling that the wreckage was more than a tool. It was a trap. The signals felt deliberate, as if they were guiding them toward something that might be too dangerous to comprehend. The deeper they delved, the more they realized the risk. This was no ordinary alien artifact. It was a key, and the key could open doors humanity was not ready to unlock. James had grown increasingly frustrated. He was becoming trapped between his desire to protect the truth and the overwhelming force of the military's demands. They had already started experimenting with the alien technology, siphoning off energy from the wreckage to power military equipment. Early tests were promising, but dangerous. The energy source seemed unstable, producing bursts of power that caused violent storms and localized gravitational disturbances. It was clear that whatever they were dealing with, it was far beyond their understanding. One evening, as Olivia reviewed the data logs, a new revelation hit her like a cold wave. The weapon wasn't just capable of harnessing energy. It could manipulate the fabric of space-time itself. The equations from the wreckage, when fully translated, described an energy field that could bend the laws of physics. Gravity could be controlled. Matter could be manipulated. Time itself could be influenced. It was a weapon that didn't just destroy. It reshaped reality. The more she studied, the more she realized this was the ultimate power, the kind of power that could tear the world apart or rebuild it entirely. James came to the same conclusion at the same time. Though neither of them spoke the words aloud, they both knew the implications. This was not just a weapon, it was the ultimate tool of control. And if it fell into the wrong hands, the world would never be the same. "We have to stop them," James said quietly one night as he stared at the wreckage. his face cast in shadow. "Before they do something irreversible." Olivia nodded. She knew that with every passing day, the military was pushing harder to unlock the technology's secrets, and each test they conducted brought the world closer to disaster. It wasn't just about controlling the weapon. It was about controlling everything. And the Wreckage's true purpose was becoming clear. It wasn't just a weapon to wield. It was a tool to control reality itself. They couldn't allow it to fall into the wrong hands. But they also couldn't fight the military alone. With General Wilder growing more ruthless in his pursuit of power, they had no choice but to make a dangerous decision. To leave the facility, to go rogue, and attempt to stop the global powers from harnessing the alien tech before it was too late. James and Olivia knew the risks. They knew that by going against the military, they would become fugitives. But they also knew that if they didn't act now, the Wreckage could reshape the world in ways they couldn't even imagine. As they packed their things in secret, ready to flee the facility, a cold realization settled in. They were no longer just archaeologists. They were humanity's last hope. The Wreckage was calling. But the question was, would anyone survive long enough to answer? James and Olivia had barely finished gathering their essentials before the facility's security system went into lockdown. The moment they made their decision to leave, they knew it was only a matter of time before the military realized they were missing. They couldn't risk being caught, not with the fate of the world hanging in the balance. As the lights dimmed and alarms began to blare, they slipped out the back exit, hearts pounding, adrenaline rushing through their veins. They had to disappear, and fast. They had no plan, no backup. The Wreckage and the alien technology were now in the hands of the military, and the people who controlled it would stop at nothing to keep it. But the coordinates, the ones embedded in the transmission, still held a cryptic promise. Deep in the ocean, there was something more, something hidden that might help them stop the weapon from being activated. Maybe it was the key to destroying the technology once and for all. With no time to waste, James and Olivia went underground, using old connections to secure false identities and transportation. They couldn't trust anyone, and every step was filled with the constant fear of being tracked. As they traveled through remote regions, they took great care to cover their tracks, all the while knowing that General Marcus Welder and his team would be hunting them down with every resource at their disposal. Their first stop was a safe house on the outskirts of Los Angeles, where they met an unlikely ally. Zara Knight, a former CIA operative turned mercenary who had been monitoring the Wreckage from the shadows. Zara had been tracking the alien technology for years, believing that it was the key to reshaping the world's power structures. Initially, she had aligned herself with the Nexus, the shadowy organization that had long operated in the background of world affairs. But after seeing the destruction that the Wreckage could cause, she'd had a change of heart. "I thought we could control it," Zara said, her voice tinged with regret. "But we can't. This thing, it's not something you wield. It wields you." Zara's warning echoed in James and Olivia's minds as they formulated a plan. They needed to reach the location in the ocean before anyone else did, but that meant avoiding detection at all costs. They couldn't risk being tracked by Wilder's forces. Zara had the perfect solution. An old submarine she had access to, disguised and untraceable. With it, they could navigate the depths of the ocean, where the coordinates pointed, and hopefully uncover the hidden truth about the Wreckage. The next day, they set off, cutting through the Pacific under the cover of night. As they neared the coordinates, a strange sense of unease settled over them. The sea was unnervingly calm, and the night felt colder than usual. Olivia studied the coordinates on the map one last time, the tension mounting with every passing moment. This was it, the final stretch of their journey. Then the submarine's sonar began to beep erratically. Something was there, something massive. The water around them seemed to vibrate, just as the Wreckage had done when it had first been uncovered. They were close, but as they drew nearer, the temperature inside the submarine dropped drastically, the machinery glitching with each pulse of energy that seemed to emanate from the ocean floor. It was as if the very fabric of reality was beginning to shift. James and Olivia exchanged uneasy glances. Whatever was down there was not just a piece of technology. It was alive. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the hull, followed by a violent jolt. The submarine lurched forward, and the lights flickered. They had crossed into something far beyond their understanding, and they had no idea what they were about to unleash. The wreckage had awakened, and it was calling them. The submarine shuddered violently, and for a moment, the world outside went completely still. The water that had seemed calm moments before was now swirling with energy, as if the ocean itself were alive, responding to their presence. The sudden drop in temperature was unbearable, and the dim red emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the small control room. "Zara, what's happening?" Olivia shouted over the rumble, gripping the edge of her seat. Zara's face was pale, her eyes glued to the sonar display, where a massive shape loomed beneath them, just beyond the reach of their sensors. It was enormous, shifting with an unnatural fluidity that made the ocean feel like it was in constant motion. "We've crossed into something's domain. Whatever it is, it doesn't want us here." James looked at the sonar screen. The shape beneath them was too large to comprehend, an object that seemed to bend the rules of physics. It wasn't just a ship or a base. It was something far older, far more powerful, and it was pulsing with energy, just like the wreckage on the surface. Before they could process this, another violent shake rocked the submarine. This time, it felt different. It was like the ocean had reached out and grabbed them. The hull groaned, and something metallic scraped against the side with a sickening screech. The sub lurched forward, and then stopped abruptly, as if caught in an invisible force. The emergency alarms blared louder now, signaling that the pressure was too much for the vessel's structure. "We need to pull back. This thing's not built for this kind of pressure," Zara shouted, her hands flying across the controls in a panic. But the submarine wasn't responding. The controls were unresponsive, and the hull groaned as if something powerful was pressing against it from all sides. Olivia's heart raced. This wasn't just mechanical failure. It felt like an external force was holding them in place, keeping them tethered to the ocean floor. Then, a new sound filled the submarine. A low, resonating hum, deep and vibrating, as if the entire ocean was speaking. It was the same hum they'd felt near the wreckage. Only this time, it was amplified. The sound vibrated through their bones, reverberating through the very walls of the submarine. James clenched his jaw. This is the source. It's coming from whatever is down there. Suddenly, the hum intensified, and the submarine's lights went out entirely, leaving them in total darkness. In the pitch-black silence, a deep, resonant voice filled the space, echoing in their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. It was not in any language they recognized, but the meaning was clear. It wasn't speaking to them. It was speaking through them. A series of vivid images flashed in their minds. Glimpses of a civilization far older than humanity, immense structures floating on an alien world, and a devastating weapon. A device that could bend time and space to its will. Olivia gasped, clutching her head as the images surged. "It's showing us a vision. What is this?" Before anyone could answer, the pressure on the submarine suddenly released. The vessel lurched again, but this time, it was moving of its own accord, as if some force was guiding it. The walls of the sub began to glow with a faint blue light, and the instruments slowly flickered back to life. But something had changed. The coordinates they had followed led them not just to a site, but to something deeper, more profound. The sub wasn't simply floating. It was being drawn towards something larger, something beyond understanding. The ocean around them cleared as the submarine descended into a massive chasm, revealing an enormous alien structure at the bottom, hidden from the surface for eons. It was a temple, or a ship, massive and sprawling, with impossible angles and technologies far beyond anything human science could fathom. The very surface of the structure seemed to ripple with energy, as if it were alive. "We found it," James whispered, his voice barely audible. But his words were filled with awe and dread. They were not just at the heart of an ancient alien civilization. They were standing at the edge of the universe's greatest power. But as the submarine moved closer, the hum grew louder, more insistent. It was no longer a call. It was a warning. They weren't supposed to be here. And now that they had uncovered the true source of the wreckage's power, they would have to face its consequences. The closer the submarine drew to the alien structure, the more intense the hum became. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It felt like a force, a pressure that pushed against their very minds. James, Olivia, and Zara could feel it deep within their bones, vibrating through their bodies, as if the ocean itself were calling them to something far beyond their understanding. The alien structure loomed ahead, its surface pulsating with an unnatural glow, like a living entity that had been dormant for millennia. "This is it," Zara muttered, her hands trembling on the controls. "We found the heart of it." The submarine was moving on its own now, no longer obeying their commands. Whatever had activated the wreckage had also taken control of the sub, guiding it towards the structure as though it were a magnet pulling them in. There was no escaping it. Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. What they had uncovered was no longer just a weapon. It was the nucleus of something far more dangerous, something that could change the fabric of reality itself. As they approached the structure, its surface seemed to ripple, bending and warping in impossible ways. The walls weren't solid. They were alive, shifting with energy. Strange, geometric patterns etched themselves into the surface, glowing in brilliant blue and violet hues. The structure was ancient, but it wasn't abandoned. It was waiting for them, calling them. "We need to get out of here," Olivia said, her voice tight with fear. "This place isn't meant for humans. Whatever's inside, it's not a gift. It's a curse." James shook his head, eyes wide with both awe and terror. "We don't have a choice. We have to know what it is, Olivia. We have to stop it before it stops us." Zara gave them a hard look, her expression a mixture of determination and fear. "I didn't sign up for this. But you're right. We need to understand what we're dealing with. If this thing can control space and time, then it can do far worse than just destroy cities. It could destroy the entire world." As if in response to their words, the hum intensified, filling the entire submarine with a sharp, agonizing sound. The lights flickered violently, casting the control room in darkness once more. The temperature dropped again, and the submarine's walls groaned under an unseen weight. It was as though the structure was coming alive, responding to their presence in a way that made the very air feel oppressive. James and Olivia exchanged a grim look. They were too deep now to turn back. Whatever lay ahead, they had no choice but to face it. Zara steered the submarine closer to the glowing structure, and as they passed through the energy field surrounding it, the walls of the temple, or ship, they couldn't be sure which, shifted open, revealing an entrance. The passageway seemed to beckon them inside, and with a final, reluctant breath, Zara steered the sub into the opening. The moment they entered, the world outside seemed to fade. The walls of the structure closed behind them with an eerie silence, and the submarine came to a slow halt. The air inside was thick with energy, almost tangible, humming with a low vibration that they could feel in their chests. The space was vast, cavernous, and impossibly ancient. Strange symbols, similar to those on the wreckage they had studied, were etched into the walls, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. As they stepped out of the sub, the temperature dropped further, and the floor beneath them seemed to pulse with energy. They walked carefully, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The further they moved, the more they realized the magnitude of what they were standing in. This was no simple alien relic. It was a machine, an immense device, vast beyond comprehension, with the power to alter the very nature of reality. In the center of the room stood a massive control panel, its surface covered in alien technology, still active after millennia. It was connected to the very heart of the structure, and Olivia could feel the pulse of energy beneath her feet. The wreckage they had discovered was just a part of this network, a gateway to something far greater. "This is it," Olivia whispered, her voice trembling. "This is the weapon, the ultimate power." But before they could move closer, the walls of the structure began to hum louder, shaking as if something deep within the temple was awakening. They weren't alone. Whatever had been lying dormant was starting to stir, and now they were trapped in its grasp. James turned to Zora. "Get us out of here. Now." But it was already too late. The energy field around them intensified, and the structure seemed to come alive, its walls shifting, locking them in. They had triggered something far worse than they had ever imagined. The wreckage wasn't just a weapon. It was a doorway, and they had just opened it. The air around them vibrated, thick with a heavy presence. The walls of the massive alien structure groaned as if they were alive, and the hum that had once been distant now rumbled through their very bones. The energy was rising, surging upward from the heart of the temple, and the temperature dropped even further. They could feel the walls pressing in, as if the entire structure was constricting, preparing for something unimaginable. Olivia's heart pounded as the reality of their situation hit. They were not just on the brink of a discovery. They had unleashed something that could alter the course of human history. Worse, it wasn't just a weapon. It was a gateway to something far darker than they had imagined, something far beyond their control. "We need to get out of here," Zara shouted, her voice shaking. She turned to the control panel, her fingers flying across the alien interface, trying to regain control of the submarine. But the machinery was unresponsive. The structure had sealed them inside, trapping them. James glanced around, his eyes wide with panic. "It's too late. The wreckage, it's a beacon. It was never meant to be found. The people who created it, they didn't just leave it here by accident." Olivia's voice cracked. "It's not just a weapon. It's a message, a warning. And now we've triggered something that's been waiting for eons." The walls around them began to pulse with energy, glowing brighter by the second. The air was so dense with power that they could barely breathe. Then the hum turned into a deafening roar, and before they could react, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. The very fabric of reality seemed to bend. The walls around them shimmered and distorted, as if the laws of physics were breaking down. Time itself felt warped, like the seconds stretched into eternity, and then collapsed back on themselves. "We've activated it," Olivia shouted, stepping back, her face pale with fear. "It's responding to us, faster than we can process." A flash of light erupted from the center of the control panel. The entire structure shook, and the walls seemed to ripple like water. For a moment, everything went still. Then, from the depths of the temple, a low, resonant sound filled the air, like a voice, ancient and far-reaching, calling out through the fabric of space and time. The walls cracked open, revealing a new passage, a tunnel of pure energy, swirling with unknown forces. And at the end of the tunnel stood something they couldn't comprehend, a vast, swirling vortex, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. It was as though the structure had become a conduit to another dimension, a gateway to a place outside of time and space, a place that no human should ever enter. "We have to stop this," James screamed, but his words were drowned out by the roaring vortex that seemed to call them forward, pulling them toward it with an irresistible force. Zara stumbled back, her face white with terror. "This isn't a weapon. It's a rift, a doorway. It's pulling us into something else, a reality we were never meant to see." Olivia looked around desperately. There was no way out. The walls were closing in on them, the structure responding to the rift in the center. The vortex was growing larger, pulling at the very fabric of the world. The deeper they went into the structure, the closer they came to the heart of the rift, and the more distorted reality became. "We've triggered something beyond us," Olivia whispered, her voice filled with dread. "It's not just a weapon. It's a key. a key to another universe, and we're standing at the threshold. James grabbed her arm. We need to destroy it. We need to stop it, or the world as we know it will cease to exist. But as the vortex expanded, the structure began to disintegrate around them. The walls crumbling, the energy field growing stronger. The rift was tearing apart the reality they knew. The alien technology wasn't just a tool. It was an ancient device designed to open the doorway to another realm, to another world far beyond their comprehension. In that moment, they realized that they had not just unlocked a weapon. They had unlocked the end of the world itself. As the vortex pulled them closer, the final remnants of the alien temple began to collapse. Time itself was breaking down, and with that, the fate of Earth hung in the balance. Whether they could stop it or not, the consequences of their discovery would echo through the ages, one way or another. The only question now was whether they would survive to face it.